It is midnight in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. President Park Geun-hye receives policy reports from the nation's ministries on this Tuesday for the first time in the new administrative city of Sejong. And taking the stage today are Korea's welfare, labor, and gender equality ministries. South Korea dispatches a delegation to the North Mount Kumgang Resort, the venue of the scheduled reunions for families separated by the Korean War next week, to inspect the facilities after a heavy snowfall there. And it's day 4 of medal events at the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. We'll have a wrap-up of who took home the shiny medals and what to look forward to today. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin right here in Korea. President Park Geun-hye has reiterated her call for the creation of a system that will strengthen social welfare services while boosting employment and the economy. At a meeting with the ministers of health, labor, and gender equality on this Tuesday, President Park outlined the program proposed earlier this year. Now, it involves increasing subsidies for parents on childcare leave, expanding the number of public daycare centers, and offering more flexible hours to working parents. The president also underscored the need for deregulation in the country's service sector. Now, moreover, she said the health service sector has the potential to provide young people with good jobs and vowed stronger government support. The government's economic policies are being put through the ringer at the National Assembly on this Tuesday, and Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Hyun Woo-seok is the Park administration's man in the hot seat. The ruling Saenuri Party is focusing on what the government is doing to achieve a 70% employment rate and to lay the groundwork for a per capita income of $40,000 during President Park's term. The ruling party is also demanding the government collect and disclose information about public sector organizations that are laxly or unethically managed, in line with the president's pledge to reform the sector. The main opposition Democratic Party is urging the government to move cautiously with free trade agreements and come up with better protective measures for farmers, saying their average income is just 80% of the national average. Meanwhile, heavy snowfall on North Korea's Mount Kumgang could threaten an upcoming round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War. An official at the Unification Ministry in Seoul said Tuesday that Mount Kumgang had seen over 2 meters of snow as of Monday. Now, the official said a South Korean delegation left for the north this morning to inspect the site following an emergency meeting on Monday night. 9 snowplows were working around the clock to clear the site in time for the reunion event slated for next Thursday through the 25th, but at least 1 more snowfall is expected before then. The officials said the reunions have taken place in the past when Mount Kumgang had over 1.5 meters of snow, adding that no major problems arose because of the snowfall. Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is putting a bold new emphasis on agriculture and changing what he sees as an equal but highly unproductive distribution system. Our Kwon So-ah has this report.
Kim Jong-un is trying to drive competition in his country's agriculture sector. In a letter to agricultural leaders released after a national conference, Kim signaled that he plans to make reforms to the current system. He emphasized the need to boost productivity by accelerating farmers' efforts, saying the current equal distribution system is the reason for a lack of enthusiasm. He added the current system, which distributes a fixed amount of produce to farm workers, does not go hand in hand with the state's socialist principles. Individuals' efforts will be incentivized in the future to build a more competitive structure.
Apart from the amount of harvest fixed by the country, workers who made extra efforts should receive extra compensation.
Kim also is pushing ahead with a system which was briefly introduced in 2002, which gives part of a field to 3 to 5 people and ranks their compensation according to their productivity. While the changes reflect Kim Jong-un's ambitious plans to revitalize the economy, it remains to be seen whether the new system will be able to surmount the nation's chronic food shortages. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
The White House says it's very disappointed North Korea decided to cancel an invitation for the top U.S. human rights envoy to visit Pyongyang to discuss the release of imprisoned American missionary Kenneth Bae. But there may be some light at the end of the tunnel as a former U.S. ambassador to South Korea landed in Pyongyang Monday evening on unspecified business. Yoo Dee-yeon reports.
The United States has expressed its deep regret over North Korea's decision to withdraw its invitation to U.S. human rights envoy Robert King to discuss the release of Korean-American Kenneth Bae.
Well, I can tell you that we are deeply disappointed by the DPRK decision for a second time to rescind its invitation for Ambassador King to travel to Pyongyang to discuss Kenneth Bae's release.
While the reason for the withdrawal is not yet clear, a State Department official said it could be related to the upcoming joint military drill between South Korea and the U.S. The White House drew a clear line between the two issues.
We remind the DPRK that the U.S. ROK military exercises are transparent, regularly scheduled, and defense-oriented. These exercises are in no way linked to Mr. Bae's case, and we believe they know that.
The White House says it will continue to push North Korea to agree to let King visit. But hopes for Bae's quick release haven't completely faded. On Monday, North Korea received a delegation led by former U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Donald Gregg, who experts believe will aim to win Bae his freedom. Without offering details on his unannounced visit to Pyongyang, Gregg merely stated he was glad to be back.
Very happy to be back in Pyongyang, my first time in about 8 years, so we're looking forward to talks and happy to see you. Thank you.
Gregg served as Washington's envoy to Seoul from 1989 to 1993 and has since called for greater engagement with North Korea. And his surprise visit is raising hopes for Bae's swift release. Bae was arrested by North Korean authorities after entering the country in November 2012 and was later sentenced to 15 years of hard labor for alleged crimes against the state. Yoo Dee-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Now, there is another U.S. state other than Virginia that is looking to educate its younger generation with correct history. The U.S. state of New York is stepping up efforts to use the name East Sea for the body of water between Korea and Japan after Virginia's state legislature recently passed a similar bill. In a press conference Monday, a group of state lawmakers and Korean American community members said they had submitted related bills to the upper and lower houses in the state. The bills require the use of the name East Sea and Sea of Japan in all school textbooks published after July 1st. The Korean American community is hoping to see the bills pass in May. Now, last week, the Virginia House of Delegates passed a bill requiring that the State Education Board only approve textbooks that use both names. The bill will be sent to Governor Terry McAuliffe for him to sign it into law. Now, China and Taiwan are gearing up for their first ever government-to-government meeting since their split back in 1949. Now, during the historic meeting that is set for later today, the two sides are expected to renew their political and economic ties. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
China and Taiwan are about to begin their highest-level talks in more than 6 decades. Zhang Zijin, the head of China's Taiwan Affairs Office, and his Taiwanese counterpart Wang Wuqi are to meet in China's eastern city of Nanjing on Tuesday afternoon. The two sides are likely to discuss ways to pursue economic reconciliation, and Beijing may push for passage of a stall-free trade agreement with Taiwan. Many expect the meeting could become the basis for a future summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Taiwanese counterpart Ma Ying-jeou, possibly around the time of this year's APEC summit in Beijing in October. China and Taiwan split at the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949. China regards Taiwan as part of its territory and has said repeatedly that it will reclaim the island, while Taiwan wants to be seen as an independent country. The conflict has created a decades-long military standoff between the United States and China, as the U.S. is committed to defending the democracy-based Taipei against communist Beijing. Ties between China and Taiwan improved radically after Taiwan's pro-Beijing President Ma Ying-jeou was elected in 2008. Since then, tours from mainland China have boosted Taiwan's economy. Taiwanese technology firms have expanded in the mainland, their investments worth billions of dollars. But there is also speculation that the friendly terms will not last, since President Ma and his pro-Beijing policy is deeply unpopular among the Taiwanese people. Analysts say Ma's Kuomintang party is likely to lose local elections slated for later in the year. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
Second half blast, figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
The legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government.
Now, growth is expected to pick up in the most advanced economies during the first half of this year, with the overall recovery being led by the U.S. and Japan. But it's a different story for emerging economies whose forecast is less upbeat. Kim Min-ji reports.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development expects major nations to show signs of firm growth over the first 6 months of the year. In its latest economic report released Monday, the OECD said its leading indicator covering 33 member countries had reached its highest level in almost 3 years in December last year, a sign that growth is firming. The OECD Index of Composite Leading Indicators showed that overall growth condition of the member states was above trend, rising to 100.9 in the last month of 2013, edging up from 100.8 in November. The CLI shows how the economy will fare over the next 6 months by measuring the current industrial output, financial market conditions, and the gross domestic product of each nation. A reading above 100 means economic expansion, while one below shows otherwise. The overall recovery is forecast to be driven by quickening economic growth in the United States and Japan. The OECD index showed that the U.S. stood at 101 in December, up from 100.9 in the previous month, the highest level since the global financial crisis in March 2008. For the same period, Japan saw its reading edge up to 101.4 from 101.3, also the highest level since the financial crisis. The 18-nation Eurozone also saw its reading jump to 101.1 from 100.9. However, the OECD painted a different picture for emerging economies, with growth trends looking less rosy. China's reading stood at 99.3 in December, unchanged from the previous month. Many analysts say the Chinese economy could slow this year as Beijing plans to shift its focus away from exports and investment to domestic spending and consumption. Russia's indicator also remained stable at 99.7, while India dropped to 97 from 97.2. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, the savings rate of Korea's manufacturing firms has more than doubled in the last 30 years. And while tucking more money away might be good news for a person, the opposite tends to be true for businesses. Seoul's Ministry of Strategy and Finance said Tuesday that the firm's savings rate jumped from 7.4% in 1975 to over 15% in 2011. After evaluating the savings rate of other OECD members, Korean firms had the fourth highest savings rate, up 8 notches since year 2000. Now, experts say the government should provide incentives to prevent companies from excessive saving, as that money could be used to invest and grow the firm. Now, Japan was top of the savings list, followed by the Netherlands and Estonia. Those with the lowest savings rates were Portugal, France, and Italy. Now, taking a look at how the market is doing at this hour, Seoul shares inched up early Tuesday to hit their highest intraday level in almost 2 weeks as index giant Samsung Electronics rose on bargain hunting, but gains were capped before the new U.S. central bank chief speaks to Congress. As of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was trading up nearly 0.5% at 1932, which is its highest since end of January. The Tech-heavy Kosdaq was trading nearly flat, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading weaker against the greenback at 1,072 won flat. The world's biggest plane maker, Boeing, expects nearly half of the world's air traffic growth over the next 20 years to be driven by the Asia-Pacific region. But the U.S.-based company is monitoring local currencies to assess airlines' ability to meet orders. Kim Hyun-gil has this report.
With billions of dollars in deals expected to be concluded before it's all over on Sunday, the Singapore Air Show is sure to test the appetites of one of aviation's fastest-growing regions. On the eve of the region's premier aerospace event, Boeing reiterated its 20-year forecast for global airplane demand at $4.8 trillion and predicted that the fleet of aircraft in the Asia-Pacific would nearly triple over the next 2 decades.
Well, as we look out the next 20 years, the Asia-Pacific market will be the largest marketplace in the world. We expect passenger traffic to grow about 6.3% per year, cargo traffic at 5.8%. And as a result of this growth, we see a total demand of close to 13,000 airplanes here in the Asia-Pacific region.
Boeing projects that passenger airlines in the Asia-Pacific region will rely primarily on single-aisle airplanes such as its next-generation 737, largely thanks to the success of low-cost carriers. Boeing said single-aisle airplanes will represent 69% of the new planes in the region. The growth in the single-aisle planes will also be fueled by rising demand from China, meaning that Boeing will likely face competition from local companies like Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China in the future.
It's also a market where we see the biggest demand for single-aisle airplanes like the 737. And I think it's not by accident then that COMAC is focusing on that single-aisle market to bring their new airplane to the market.
To meet the growing demand, Boeing says it is planning to do a better job of delivering planes to its clients on time. Currently, the company has a schedule reliability of about 98%. Kim Hyun-gil, ARIRANG News.
And now it's time for our special coverage of the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics with our Lee Tae-ho, and he is here with me live in the studio to bring us all the latest from the games. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
So now, last night was a big night for men's speed skating and for Korean fans as well.
That's right. Now, the big event last night was the 500-meter speed skating event, where there were 2 Korean favorites, of course, Lee Gyu-hyuk, who is 35 years old, and he continued his medal drought, unfortunately, placing 18th. But he does have another chance on Wednesday with the 1,000-meter event coming up, and the 2010 Vancouver gold medalist, Motorbom, placing 4th. But yeah, it was an unfortunate night, but the races were thrilling nonetheless.
Right. I mean, a lot of Korean fans had, high hopes for a medal, if not the gold medal from Motorbom from this event, because, of course, he was the reigning champion or defending champion going into the Olympics. And he came in 4th, and I think a lot of us would agree that it's not that he didn't skate well, it's just that the Dutch just skated way too well.
Well, I think that would be quite the understatement right now. Team Netherlands just swept the races last night in the 500-meter event, with the Mulder twins taking 1st, the gold and the bronze, and fellow teammate Schmeckens taking the silver medal. Team Dutch, the Netherlands, is just dominating the speed skating events right now. Out of the total 9 medals available that are currently awarded, 7 of them have gone to the Netherlands. So that speaks of total dominance right now.
Right. I mean, it's amazing to have seen the Netherlands flag, all 3 of them up on the podium for the men's 1500 event and now the men's 500 event as well. So, Netherlands is where the ISU was first started in 1982, so it's no wonder that they are a strong country for speed skating.
Well, for any of the winter events, really. And, Netherlands has been a very stronghold of the speed skating event. And Korea has been kind of like the upstart, the new contender. And we fared fairly well so far in international events and past Olympic events. But this year, I think Netherlands is reclaiming its claim to dominance, of course.
Right. If the Netherlands were the strong country for in speed skating, of course, we have Korea, we have the short track speed skating. That's been, that's an event that put Korea on the Winter Olympics map in the first place.
That's right. Now, the 1,500-meter race was of great interest, and one race that in particular got me a little bit saddened because watching two Korean teammates, Shin Da-eun and Lee Han-bin, tripping over each other on the ice when they were in the first and second positions in the semifinals was really, really disheartening because if they had made it to the finals, I think that the results could have been a little bit different from last night.
Right, and there was actually another reason why the short track speed skating event was watched so closely, especially by those here in Korea with perhaps a little bit of a wounded heart.
That's right. Now, Victor An, formerly known as An Yeon-soo here in Korea, became a Russian national and was skating in a different country uniform. And I think a lot of Korean fans, because a lot of Korean fans are still interested in how he does, was greatly saddened by seeing that because he took home the bronze. But I think he really displayed the spirit of the Olympic Games by consoling his South Korean junior member Lee Han-bin, who placed sixth in the same competition. But it was a thrilling race. He did a fantastic job. And I think a lot of fans were still cheering for him here.
Right, definitely so. I mean, even when after winning his bronze medal, he skated around a celebratory lap with a Russian flag over his shoulders. I'm sure all the Russian fans cheered for him, but, the Korean fans were, applauding him as well.
That's right. Now, and this was such a big issue because he wasn't just another Korean skater. He was one of the most decorated Korean winter athletes. He was the most awarded athlete at the 2006 Games, taking home 4 medals, 3 gold, 1 bronze, and he was a 5-time overall season champion. So he wasn't just a normal skater, but one of the most decorated. And I think he had a really bad streak of a bad luck streak with conflicts with the KSU officials here in Korea and coaches and teammates, and a really horrible knee injury in 2008 that sidelined him for over a year. So seeing him transition over to Russia and then recuperating to regain his current form and his current success, I think that's why a lot of fans were really cheering for him. But nonetheless, still kind of disappointing as a Korean to see him in another uniform.
Right, definitely so. But you were telling me how he's not the only one who actually took another nationality to compete in the Olympics.
That's definitely true. Now, even in the Sochi 2014 Games this year, we have several different athletes that are competing for different nations, such as Vanessa Mae, who is a world-renowned violinist. She was born in Singapore. She is a British national, but she's competing for Thailand in one of the in the alpine skiing events. So that's just one of the many examples of the different athletes competing under different nations.
No, it's a practice that the IOC is well aware of, right? Taking another nationality if they could in order to compete in the big games, because Olympics, it's actually, it's the star on a Christmas tree. It's the cherry on on ice cream, right?
Yes, well, for many athletes, this is a once in a lifetime event. They train their whole lives, and it comes about every 4 years, and they don't know if they'll make it to the next Olympic events. And this practice known as passport sweeping goes beyond the Sochi 2014 Games. It's a practice that originated in the Hellenistic period during the original Greek Olympics, where athletes would sell off their services to the highest paying nations. So it's definitely a practice that's been around for a very long time.
But definitely very legal at the current moment, the way it's done.
Yes.
Now, there's something else that we could look forward to tonight. We here in Korea, we're looking forward to our first medal, if not the gold medal.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Now, one of the big 3 Korean speed skating trio, the lady of the team, Lee Sang-hwa, will be competing in tonight's event. Now, she is the defending gold champion in the 500 meter, and she's the current world record holder with 36.36 seconds, which is amazing. She is an amazing athlete, and I think the whole world is looking at her as the heavy favorite.
Right, and we will be looking forward to a medal from her, if not the gold medal, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for tonight.
Definitely keeping our fingers crossed and watching that event tonight.
All right, thank you, Tae go for that, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right.
Let's now turn to Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. And Michelle, now in Sochi, it looks like the days have been really warm enough for all the snow slope athletes to be competing.
That's right, and it's causing the snow to melt, making things very difficult for the athletes. The daytime highs throughout the day of the Olympics is expected to go up to 17 degrees, but for now it's cloudy and the high is expected to go up to 11. Now moving on to the weather forecast in Korea, it's sunny here in Seoul and our daytime highs are very similar to yesterday, but it's quite windy, which makes it feel even colder. Now going over to our satellite map, as you can see, we have fairly clear skies all over the nation, and the snow is in Gangwon province has slowed down and which is expected to stop overnight. Now moving on to the readings. The things are looking very similar to yesterday. Seoul will top out at 5 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak to 8 and 5 degrees respectively. Now down on to Jeju Island, we can expect another cloudy day. Dokdo Island will get up to -3, while Mankyungbang tops out at -8. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you.
And that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.